LiberalViewer presents.
So welcome to this LiberalViewer special last presidential debate live clip roundup that I've titled Trump-Biden Actually Debate? Thanks for joining me. This is my clip roundup of the last presidential debate where Donald Trump and Joe Biden finally debated somewhat. I actually have a debate background. Back in high school, I was in forensics, and of course I went to law school, did mock trial, did actual trials as a criminal defense attorney, so I kind of know what debate is. And the way presidential debates these days they're kind of more like dueling talking points, like zingers. Basically, the problem is that the answers are all too short, 2 minutes and then 30 seconds. You need like 5 minutes at least to make an argument and support it with facts in a way that's persuasive. That it's really more like talking points and zingers. Compared to the last debate, it's actually a debate, I guess. And I'm going to show you that I think Biden won almost every single exchange in the debate. Going back and rewatching it is when I really realized this. I'm going to show you 6 clips, about 29 minutes of the 96-minute debate. So we're going to watch about a third of the debate together. And I think you'll see Biden wins 5 of the 6. And I think that's I left out like maybe one place where Trump had a good moment and a couple other places where Biden had some good moments, but I think it's pretty representative. You can tell me what you think in the comment section for my live viewers along the way, or recorded show viewers, of course. And then I will show you the first reactions from all of the big 5 corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. I will add my media criticism and political commentary. The clips altogether the clips are over an hour, so this live stream's going to be going on for a while. I hope you have something to add and you enjoy the clips I picked out to show you. I kind of have some political comedy to start with. It's from the CNN. This is Jake Tapper's first reaction, his first 10-second reaction to the debate that at least I found a little amusing, that I'll start off the live stream with you this afternoon. Here.
It was definitely a more normal debate. President Trump behaved more like a regular person might, theoretically.
More normal debate. Trump behaved like a regular person might, theoretically. I don't know, that's sort of a passive-aggressive description, but I found it amusing. You can let me know if you found it amusing. The first clip I'm going to show you is the longest of all the clips. This is almost 8 minutes from the beginning of the debate. By the way, if you want to see the whole debate on C-SPAN, I put a link down in the video description to the full debate. So if you don't like the way I've edited it, you can watch what I left out. I did leave out Trump's first 2 minutes on coronavirus. It's a lot of the stuff we've already heard, about how he's done so much, and, the ventilators, the masks, no one could have seen it coming. It came from China and all that stuff. And you'll see at the very end here, he talks about how it's going away. And then Biden comes in and has his 2 minutes, which his first 2 minutes, I think, are the most important, and I think he did a great job indicting Trump's performance on the coronavirus, and they go back and forth here. There are a couple good zingers, since that's one of the things that we're looking for, are zingers, and I will talk about that almost 8-minute clip from the beginning of the debate. Like I said, leaving out a little bit of Trump at the beginning, but I think you get a lot of Trump and Biden wins this interchange on COVID-19 that I will discuss with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your
I
reaction?
say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch out of habit where their wife or husband is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about.
And after that, Trump actually does say he takes responsibility. And like I said, that clip was already almost 8 minutes long, but I think Biden got the zingers in there. Well, he started off with the strong 2 minutes with the case numbers and the failures of Trump. And I think that zinger, learning to live with it, we're learning to die with it. He also did his directly look into the camera thing, talking to the American people. I'm not actually showing the clip where Trump made fun of that. I will show former Senator Rick Santorum later claiming that was a win moment for Trump, which I don't think it was, but maybe it was. If it was, I left it out. That might be one winning moment I left out. I have another moment that Trump's making a lot of, the 6th clip. That's the transitioning from the oil industry clip. That's clip number 6. But now I want to get to the 2nd clip from the debate. This was one of the most anticipated subjects, where Trump brought up the Hunter Biden scandal, that, this is what he got impeached for, trying to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden, even though, the evidence is really weak, but it was really hyped up. If you watch as much Fox News as I do, it really got hyped during, the last week, and then during the day before the debate, this former Hunter Biden associate, what's his name, Tony Bobulinski, gave a press conference, and then he was Trump's guest at the debate. And so you knew Trump was going to bring it up. And the most amazing thing about it, by the way, this whole Chinese deal that Tony Bobulinski was involved with, 2 facts that have come out about it that make it kind of ridiculous is, one, it's from May 2017, so it's after Biden is vice president. So it's not like the whole Ukraine thing that you'll see Biden respond to here, that Trump got impeached over, where there was nothing there, that Biden was really carrying out U.S. foreign policy when he held up the $1 billion until they fired the prosecutor. That was actually U.S. foreign policy, had nothing to do with Hunter Biden's seat on the board of Burisma or any of that. But you'll hear that in this clip. But then the Tony Bobulinski thing happened in May 2017, and after Biden was vice president. Also, it was a business deal that never happened. There was no deal. No one ever made any money. It was like an attempt to make a deal. apparently. And then the Wall Street Journal even kind of debunked as much as there was about Biden knowing about his son's business dealings. But anyway, with that introduction, I will show you. This is a little over 7 minutes, not quite as long as the last clip, but I think this shows why the whole Hunter Biden scandal is pretty much fizzled out. And I'll talk about it with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
But you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30 seconds. And then I do
I-
want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions
I have
about
to
all of this,
respond to
but
that.
I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
don't
lot
have
of
a time.
people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to
Some point
talk
about
about
this
this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years
Everybody
you're going to
knows.
release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Very
So
quickly, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq. Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just, one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world, I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy
I'm going to let the Vice President respond to that quickly,
dishonest.
and then I need to get to a question to you. Very quickly.
No basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President.
So that's the clip I'm going to show you on that. There was definitely more back and forth than what I showed you, but I think Biden won that pretty handily. He did some sort of debate jujitsu there where he turned the Hunter Biden thing around on Trump. And, he told a bunch of lies. I'm not even fact-checking all the lies. I was reading the live comments while that clip was playing, and I noticed this comment from Dinah Cat Loves Me. Saying Mueller never saw Trump's tax returns. So yeah, that was a lie. One of many lies Trump has told in the clips I've showed you so far. I'm not doing like fact checks on everything Trump says. I am going to show you some of the corporate news outlets do fact checks in the clips I'm going to show you at the end here. And actually, I believe it might be Brian Williams on NBC or maybe Rachel Maddow on MSNBC who mentions that Mueller never did look at Trump's tax return. So that was a lie. They spent $43 million and looked at my tax returns and found nothing. No, that's a lie. So thank you for that. Dinah Cat Loves Me. And then this next clip, there was a whole bunch on healthcare that I'm not showing you, but this next clip is kind of on healthcare. It's about the public option, where Biden says he's for the public option, or it starts off with Trump saying that the public option is socialized medicine, which it isn't, and then comparing, saying that Biden is really Bernie Sanders and AOC, and you'll see Biden gets in a good zinger on that whole issue. And then you'll also see a great Biden talking to the American people right into the camera moment when Trump claims he's done such a great job with the stock market in the clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Says
Happening on
public
Capitol
option.
Hill.
He's talking about socialized medicine, and when he and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally
Wrong.
destroyed, and destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay,
It
let's
was
let Vice President
impossible
Biden
to work.
respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's
Biden,
a very
your response.
confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of.
seconds,
He
Mr.
tried to
President,
hurt
and then I
Social
have to go to
Security
another
years
question.
ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All
One
right,
thing,
let's move
but
on.
This
I'm
is
going to
the
move
guy
on.
that when they announced
Mr. President, I have to
last
move on
week,
to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to have
will
time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's
biggest
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying
question
Let me respond.
very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars. Because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to
Kristen,
move on, gentlemen.
401ks are through the roof.
We're gonna
People's
move on.
stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to
and
the
he
next
left.
question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight,
Biden didn't come from Scranton. It's the new birther controversy. Biden was born in Kenya. Is that what he's trying to say? I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But I like the way Biden looked into the camera there. And I also like the Biden zinger there on, he forgot who he's running against. He's running against Joe Biden, not Bernie Sanders, not AOC. He beat Bernie Sanders. That's why he's the nominee, which, Joe Biden wasn't my first choice. But there you go. This next clip, I'm so grateful to Kristen Welker, the moderator, for asking this question. And of all the questions, this is the one that I think is actually most devastating to Donald Trump, and Biden really drives the nails in on his despicable, monstrous answer to the question about family separation. Trump actually defends the policy of family separation here. And one thing I would recommend, if you really want to know about the whole family separation policy, I recommend that you read this. See this book? I'll take it off the shelf. Some people think this is like a fake background. No, I can actually take books off the shelf. And this is the book Separated by Jacob Soboroff, which is all about the family separation policy and how monstrous it was, how basically it tortured children by taking them away from their parents, not coyote smugglers, taking them away from their parents, as Biden points out in this next clip. And Trump actually defends the policy, so I'm really glad this came up. And I think this answer and this issue is one of the things, it's one of the strongest issues that's driving women, suburban women, away from Trump, why he has such a much larger gender gap. You know, in the 2016 election, Trump actually won white women. He didn't win all women, but he actually won white women. He's not going to win even white women. I think he has like a 27-point gender gap, and it's because women, especially mothers, this really, I mean, I was a stay-at-home dad, so I have like a lot of paternal instincts. You know, a lot of women have maternal instincts, I guess, and I can't even imagine having my child ripped away from me the way the Trump administration decided to do as policy to deter immigrants from coming to our country. It's monstrous, and so I'm really glad that Kristen Welker asked this question, and of all the answers, this is the most despicable answer from Donald Trump in the debate that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through merit.
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
they built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response, and then another question to you.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
Did not
They built the
separate
cages.
the
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down.
seconds,
We
and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you a question.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about.
And Kristen Welker, after that question from Trump, actually does go on to cross-examine Biden about the Obama administration immigration policy, the inability to get comprehensive immigration reform, the fact that Obama was the deporter-in-chief. I actually, if you've been following my channel for a long time, you know I was a critic of the Obama administration immigration policy, secure communities. I even have a video where I joined a bunch of local activists to decry immigration detainers under the Obama administration, and the ACLU actually sued the Obama administration over their immigration policy, which is where those photos came out about the cages that were built in the McAllen facility in Texas. But it was actually Trump, as Biden pointed out in that clip. Trump was the one who instituted this family separation policy that was, again, you can read the Jacob Soboroff's book, Separated, if you want to know more about that. But it was monstrous. It was just an order of magnitude beyond what anything that happened in the Obama administration. So, like I said, kudos to Kristen Welker for bringing up that topic. I think Biden definitely won that topic as well. The next clip I'm going to show you has to do with the question of environmental racism. This is the clip where Trump infamously says that he's the least racist person in the room, and that's my cue to thank Matthew for the super chat contribution I saw earlier. You know, live viewers can give the super chat contributions. Here's Matthew's. Is that to me? Thank you for the super chat contribution, Matthew. Am I the least racist person in the room? I'm the only person in the room. Sandy was over here earlier, but for some reason she's left the room. So I guess I'm the least and most racist person in the room. There was this whole previous question before this clip where Kristen Welker asked both candidates to respond to talk to black parents who have to give their children the talk about how they should respond if they get pulled over by the police. The question was, do you understand the talk? And Biden gave this long, impassioned, empathetic speech about, yes, he understands, and it's terrible, and there's institutional racism. And then Trump said, yes, I understand, and then he went into how great he had been for African Americans, you know, lowest black unemployment before the coronavirus epidemic, and funding HS, you know, the historically black colleges and universities, and the First Step Act that was, you know, criminal justice reform. And anyway, this question came after that, where Kristen Welker actually asked about a topic that I've never seen discussed, but is a really important topic, which is the topic of environmental racism. That pollution is often targeted at low income and communities where people of color live, African Americans, Latinx Americans, and Trump, I don't even think he understood the question. Biden definitely understood the question. And then as part of their exchange back and forth, you hear Trump claim to be the least racist person in the room. But in that previous exchange, he did claim to be, the best president for black Americans, with maybe the exception of Abraham Lincoln, which Biden brings up in his rebuttal. This is another zinger, like Abraham Lincoln here, which Trump doesn't even understand, as I will discuss with you a little more after we watch that clip here that starts with the question to Trump about Black Lives Matter. And he says, well, I never even heard of them until I heard pigs in a blanket fry them like bacon, as he emphasizes in his Trumpian way at the beginning of the clip. I will discuss with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
President, you've described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done, and prison reform, and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. They can say anything. It makes me sad, because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy has a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up question.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said you're Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm saying,
I didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
oh, God.
Tens of thousands of black men, mostly, in jail.
All right, let me
let me
ask
remember
Vice
it,
President
because if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about
very, very badly. Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drugs. But they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president, along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Joe.
We got a lot of it done. We released 38,000. We got 38,000 prisoners left from the.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I just asked one question. Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well, you got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes
All right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
like I did with criminal justice reform. I had to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so we got to.
And Biden's right at the end there where he says the whole criminal justice reform thing, that was already going on during the Obama administration, but McConnell wouldn't let it get through the Senate, and it could have happened if the Republicans hadn't blocked it. But, you saw in that last clip, even though I thought Biden also won that exchange, that there was Trump's theme that you'll see a couple of the corporate news outlets point out that the theme he tried to narrate there, that he tried to get into the heads of the American people, is that Biden is a politician who's been there for 47 years and he didn't get it done. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. You saw that. Why didn't you get it done? And he said, Republican Congress. I just mentioned Mitch McConnell. But I think at least Biden took some responsibility and mentioned that he did make some mistakes in the crime bill and not mandatory. He didn't say mandatory minimums. I think he kept saying minimum mandatories, but that's not a huge mistake. But like I said, I thought Biden also won that exchange despite Trump getting in some points on the, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And before I get to the final debate clip that I think actually Trump might have gotten a good sound bite out of, I did want to mention that there's sort of a sliding scale on who won the debate. I say Biden won most of the exchanges, but it depends on, are you a high information voter or are you a low information voter? Because if you're a low information voter, you might look at this debate and just analyze it based on, who had the most confidence, the strongest presentation, but you wouldn't recognize how many times Trump was lying over and over and over again. So if you are not a low information voter, if you're a high information voter, and you can see who's lying and how much, I think that also makes it more likely that you're going to understand that Biden won the debate. Although in that last clip, I think he did say that the Obama administration released 38,000 people from prison, and that's double the amount of people who were released from federal prison. I think it was more like 19,000. So that was one mistake that Biden made, but not critical to destroying his argument. Anyway, the last clip I'm going to show you, this is the question Kristen Welker asked about environmental racism, which kudos to Kristen for asking this question. No one ever brings this up. It's about how the pollution that the industries in the United States subject on the American people are concentrated in areas of where people are low income, especially where there are people of color. This happens in California, in the Central Valley, where the farm workers are. There's all these trash burning plants in places where people are poor and also people of color. So this is a great question. Trump, I'm not even sure he understands the question. All he says is, they're making so much money. But Biden understands the question, talking about the fence line and the oil residue on the windshield. But then he makes this one mistake where he's clarified it, and Kamala Harris has clarified it in the 24 hours since the debate, when he's talking about transitioning from the oil industry, he's really supposedly, he says, talking about transitioning away from the subsidies. But he gives one soundbite to Trump that they've been flogging on Fox News all day. I'm sure Trump is going to be flogging it. He even to Trump's credit, he notices the misstep from Biden and emphasizes it during the actual debate. In the final debate clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they are making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions, the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would
question.
he close down the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close down the
falls-
oil
By
industry?
the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then
Ohio.
I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context. But the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he
final
gonna get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our
rejoin
final
Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right.
That'll
This
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen.
And then the final question is, like, what would you say in your inauguration on January 20th, 2021 to talk to people who didn't vote for you? And Trump's answer was ridiculous. He, like, did a whole bunch of attacks on Biden. Biden actually made a good response to that last question. But like I said, that was the one clip I just showed you where I think Biden made a mistake. He tried to clear it up after the debate, like when he was still on the tarmac before he left Tennessee. He said that, no, he meant transitioning out of oil subsidies. And Kamala Harris also clarified that today, but Fox News has been flogging that one clip, and it was the one big mistake, I guess, that Biden made in the debate was to say something that could be used by the Trump campaign to say that he wants to get rid of oil, the whole oil industry. Well, I actually agree with what he said, that we want to transition away from fossil fuels. That, I mean, if climate change is an existential threat to the planet, don't you want to transition away from the fossil fuels who cause the greenhouse gases that cause man-made climate change? I mean, In some ways, I think the mistake, the one clip where Trump beat Biden because he made a mistake there, is also a great clip to energize the youth vote. The youth vote is especially energized by the issue of climate change, and Biden hasn't necessarily been a leader on that. He isn't even saying that fracking is going to be banned. And anyway, that's the last debate clip I want to show you. You can let me know what you think about the way I took a third of the debate as a representative sample of Biden beating Trump. In 5 of the 6 clips, I think Biden beat Trump, that last clip being the exception. Now I'm going to get to the media reactions from the big 5 corporate outlets. The first 2 being CBS and ABC. They aren't cable news networks, they're broadcast networks, and I'm putting them in order of how fast it took them to get to giving a bipartisan reaction to the debate, in terms of media bias. And they give both a Trump partisan and a Biden partisan, although for like Fox News and MSNBC, it's like someone who's vaguely on the other side that qualifies for this comparison. But I'm going to start with ABC, which wins for getting to the bipartisan interaction fastest, although it's actually after a commercial break. But here's the ABC reaction. George Stephanopoulos, multiple other ABC commentators that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Thank you.
There you have it, second and final debate of this 2020 election. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, 2 white men in their 70s, 2 very different candidates. What we heard tonight over the course of the 90 minutes as we see Melania Trump come on the stage wearing her mask tonight is 2 very different visions of how to handle the COVID crisis, how the COVID crisis was handled. For the first 40 minutes or so, it seemed like a relatively normal debate. As the candidates laid out their positions on the COVID crisis, got heated about 40 minutes in when Joe Biden unexpectedly went on offense over Donald Trump and his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. President Trump responding with a series of unverified and misleading and false charges about Joe Biden and his business dealings and the business dealings of his son, and then some harsh clashes. We didn't have the kind of interruptions we saw in the first debate. The mute did appear to work at least for a time, but there were harsh clashes on health care, the minimum wage, children separated at the border under the Trump administration policy, and the big issue of character and race. Joe Biden memorably saying sarcastically, Abraham Lincoln talking about Donald Trump as one of the most racist presidents of modern times. The big question, John Carl, in the debate hall tonight for the president and his team, did they do enough to change the dynamic of this race?
Well, look, George, this was a much better debate, and kudos to Kristen Welker in the moderating here. And certainly the Trump camp Republicans generally, who I've heard from over the course of the debate, were relieved that Donald Trump was much more disciplined. He wasn't doing all the interruptions. He actually had a theme at times, the theme that Joe Biden is a politician. When Biden would come up with something, why didn't you do it when you were in power? 47 years, why didn't you do it? So much more disciplined, Donald Trump. But George, your question, did it do enough to change the race? I don't think so. And one factor here is that Joe Biden had, I believe, the best debate that he has had in 2020. Joe Biden went on the offense. Joe Biden had Donald Trump on the defensive repeatedly. Even when it got into Hunter Biden, Joe Biden turned it around and put Donald Trump on the defensive about his taxes. I've released my taxes. Why haven't you released your taxes? How much did you pay in taxes? What about your bank account in China? It was a much feistier and more focused Joe Biden as well.
Mary Bruce, the Biden campaign had made this debate a priority. They put him down for several days to prep. Perhaps it paid off.
It certainly seems that way. And, you know, George, going into this debate, we were talking about how in many ways Joe Biden just needed to stay the course. This was anything but trying to run out the clock here tonight. Joe Biden was surprisingly aggressive. It was, I think I agree with John Carl, his strongest debate performance, much stronger certainly than the face-off that we saw him have during the primary. And he did go on offense. He went after Trump really hard on his taxes, on his lack of a health care plan, on foreign influence, on immigration and child separation policies. And his team tonight feels that he did a very strong job here. They say, you know, yes, the president may have had a softer tone, that there weren't the constant interruptions that we saw at the last debate. But Biden's team says, look, that simply doesn't cut it, that they say Trump needed a win here. He needed a big win here, and he didn't do that. That's according to the Biden team. They also feel, you know, that Trump came in trying to drive specific attacks. They say that he repeated lies and that Biden proved that he can flip the script on the president and put him on defense.
David Muir, he was not sitting on a lead.
No, it wasn't. And right out of the gate, we saw that very difference between the two of them on how they would handle the pandemic. You know, we saw the vice president come out with the black mask on. The president did not have a mask. They differed on where we've been as a country, the pandemic, where we are, and where we're going. The president talked about him having COVID. He said, I'm immune. He said, not sure how long that lasts, but I'm immune. Said a vaccine was ready. It'll be distributed quickly, although we know regulators have said emergency authorization won't come for a few more weeks, at least until around Thanksgiving. From Vice President Biden, we heard something very different. He said 220,000 Americans are dead. Any president who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain president of the United States. He used the word responsible, which is a strong word for Vice President Biden to use. He said we're about to go through a very dark winter, in stark contrast to what we've heard from Donald Trump, not only in the campaign trail this week, but he said it again tonight during the debate that we are rounding the corner, despite the surge the three of us have been reporting on in this country. And it's really no part of this country is immune to the spike that we're seeing right now. And where they really did battle is how do you move forward? Vice President Joe Biden made the argument that we've got to get money to small business. We've got to open carefully. It might mean social distancing within these businesses. The president continued to try to hammer him, saying, you've got to open things up. We are stifling the economy here in this country. But it was very stark, the difference on every single point when it comes to the pandemic.
Definitely on the pandemic. And Lindsay, one of the other things I think we saw the president trying to make headway with these attacks against Joe Biden, his personal corruption. He said it seemed like Joe Biden came back and sort of embraced that debate, saying character is on the ballot.
Right, and looked right at the American public at that moment and said, you know who we are, right? And now you make that decision. I thought that was a really strong and compelling moment that Joe Biden had. I think that he really had one job to do tonight, and that was do no harm, and I think that he accomplished that. Chris Christie said right off the top that Donald Trump's job was to say, what is he going to do in the next 4 years? Instead, he really gave what you're going to get if Joe Biden is to get elected. You're going to have a depression, the likes of which nobody has ever seen. The stock market is going to crash. Fracking will go away. You're going to have socialized medicine. Small businesses will have to fire employees, and went on and on and on.
Even when he was asked what he would be saying in his inauguration, which presumably would have been after he defeated Joe Biden. We're going to hear from Chris Christie and Rahm Emanuel.
So you see there at the very end of the clip, George Stephanopoulos says we're going to hear from Chris Christie and Rahm Emanuel after the commercial break. I'm not going to show you that clip, but that's when they get to the bipartisan interaction where they have a Republican, Chris Christie, who actually helped Trump prepare for the first debate, then got COVID-19, spent 7 days in the ICU, and came out saying he was wrong for not wearing a mask, unlike President Trump, who never admits any mistakes, pretty much. Was asked if he would have done anything different for the entire COVID-19 epidemic, said, not really. No ability to critically look at one's own past performance, because, and you know, everything Trump does is great, the best, the biggest. But I actually showed that ABC clip out of order because I said ABC got to the bipartisanship fastest, but no, it was actually CBS. CBS News had, in their post-debate discussion, they, in less than 6 minutes, they had a report from the Biden campaign and then the Trump campaign, which gave sort of the post-debate talking points from both the campaigns, which I meant to play before the ABC clip. So for anyone who I don't know, I know some people have like a drinking game when I make a clip mistake. Well, I played clip 7 and 8 out of order. The last one was clip 8. This is clip 7, CBS News, where they actually won the prize, if you're looking for it, as to which news organization of the big 5 corporate outlets actually gave you bipartisanship quickest. Here it is, CBS News. I'll talk about it with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
And an extraordinary final debate between the two candidates, much more substantive and a clash of ideas than we saw in the previous debate between the two candidates. It was as if the muting of the microphones worked, or each of them noticed where their standing was in the polls and knew what they had to do tonight. Gail, you called it. You said that this would be a different President Trump tonight.
Because I remember last time, the last 48 hours, people were counting. Donald Trump interrupted Joe Biden 73 times. So even his own supporters were saying that was not good. That was not good, and they were embarrassed for him. He came across, many thought, as obnoxious and a bully. And I think, you know, people say Donald Trump doesn't listen to his advisors, but we kept hearing the last 48 hours his advisors saying he's going to tone it down. He knows what he needs to do. And this is probably the last time that he has an opportunity to talk to an audience that is not his base. So he knows that people are watching. Joe Biden had to go and do no harm, do no foul, don't rock the boat. I think both of them can walk out tonight and say, I did very well.
The first question posed to both the candidates is, what would you do in the future to change how the trajectory of the COVID pandemic is going? President Trump did not answer that question. Instead, he said, essentially, it's not his fault and that we're rounding the corner.
Yeah, this was an actual debate. I mean, as opposed to some of the other things we've had, there was a real exchange on this question is one of them. President Trump chose to defend his record, which is probably wise for him. This is a referendum on the president. It's not about 90 minutes of how he behaved tonight. It's about 4 years in office. And that's what he's got to defend. But he didn't do on that question or even this last question, which was teed up nicely for the president and for Joe Biden for them to, and the president didn't take advantage of those questions. Why is that important? Because the dynamic of the race is the president is behind. And this was the last major opportunity with everybody watching. He needed more than just adequate. He needed to do something to change the dynamic of the race. And I don't think there was anything in tonight that changed the dynamic of the race, although there were really interesting exchanges both on COVID, the question of what to do, small business, minimum wage, North Korea, health care, the Obamacare versus the president's yet to be announced long delayed plan on health care. So there was quite a lot of substance.
But John, do you think either one of them changed the dynamic of the race? If I was for both Biden supporters and Trump supporters, I would think my candidate did very well tonight in terms of addressing. I know there were many times Donald Trump didn't answer the question, but I think, you know, because the last one was so off the rails, the fact that it was civil, I think, was a win.
Well,
a win.
But what the political scientists will say is unless there's a major gaffe, or, for example, the way the president behaved in the first one, the polls don't change. If the polls don't change, Joe Biden is in better shape because if this race is a referendum on the president's handling of COVID, which a lot of people think it is, the president gets very low marks on that. He did nothing tonight to argue about the future because this future is going well into next year and it has issues that are health related, but also the economy doesn't get fixed until COVID gets fixed.
Well, he's still saying he did a good job on COVID.
And the numbers are rising. The rebuttal to anything the president says about COVID comes in the next report on the number of cases in America. And the places that are now struggling are rural areas, which have harder time handling it at the hospitals. We're going to a very tough period. The president needed some kind of answer to throw into that future. He was talking about the past.
And I think we all know, tracking the president's rhetoric, he had been promising that a vaccine would come before election day. The science didn't bear that out, and the companies didn't like the political pressure. They wanted to make sure they had all the safety protocols in place. And as we've heard from the head of Pfizer, it won't be till late November, early December before they submit approval for a potential vaccine. And that's why all government officials had said for all of us, the widespread public, to get it, it would be April of next year at the earliest. Want to bring in CBS's Nicole Killian. She is standing by in the debate hall in Nashville. And Nicole, your impressions of this debate?
Well, I can tell you that the Biden campaign is very pleased with the former vice president's performance. They feel that they put the president on the defensive, particularly in the instance where he brought up the president's taxes. 1-8 telling me that he flipped the script on the president. The campaign also doesn't feel that the president's performance tonight changes the trajectory of this race, even if it did take on a softer tone. A few other key takeaways. The former vice president, clearly trying to make the argument that the president failed the American public on the pandemic. He also didn't take the bait when the president tried to challenge him. And then lastly, making that quintessential argument at the end that he would be an American president for all, trying to appeal to a broad swath of voters. Nora?
Nicole Killian, thank you. CBS's Paula Reed is at the White House, and we saw the president tonight. While he did not interrupt as much as he did in the previous debate, he was on the offense. He was, and we will fact check him later on in this broadcast, and he also made it personal about Biden's family.
He did, and that was part of the strategy tonight. I've been texting with some of the president's advisors, and one just texted me back saying the man stuck to the plan. And part of that plan was not to interrupt, to allow his opponent to speak, potentially make a mistake. The other part of the strategy was to bring up Biden's son, Hunter, put those accusations into the mainstream, get them in front of tens of millions of voters. It appears on those 2 points, he succeeded.
So there you go. That was actually the CBS clip. I meant to play first of my big 5 corporate outlets because they got to the bipartisan analysis fastest in less than 6 minutes. The next 3 clips are from cable news outlets, not ABC and CBS, so it takes them longer. And I've split all of these clips into 2 parts. First, starting with MSNBC. They actually got their fastest. If you count Nicole Wallace, a former George W. Bush official, press spokesperson for George W. Bush, so she counts as a Republican. She's kind of the analog to Juan Williams over on Fox News as the first so-called liberal to talk, but he's kind of a conservative liberal since he got kicked off of NPR for bad comments, and now he's kind of like a Fox News liberal. Well, Nicole Wallace is the MSNBC conservative, and this clip, it shows that it takes almost 7 minutes, a little less than 7 minutes for MSNBC to get to Nicole Wallace, but it's because of all the fact-checking. Brian Williams and then especially Rachel Maddow do some really excellent fact-checking that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
The last of the presidential debates is history. Our cameras will stay on this view of the debate venue as their spouses join them on stage. Everyone there has been told to follow the coronavirus protocols. The first couple, of course, have both had the illness. And the most urgent topic of our times led off tonight. As Kristen Welker pointed out, we have 40,000 Americans hospitalized tonight. The president, though, went back to his standard themes and did not digress. Quote, it will go away. Quote, we're rounding the corner. Quote, it is going away. And then when he said we're learning to live with it, Joe Biden scored his first rhetorical points of the evening when he said, in fact, the opposite was true. Quote, we're dying with it. Vice President Biden was accused of, and this is still a puzzler, of selling pillows and sheets. We're trying to run that one down. President repeated what he often says, no one's been tougher on Russia. All evidence to the contrary. About his taxes, he said, oh, those were prepaid. There were a lot of echo chamber references, a lot of references that rally audiences would get and right-wing media audiences might get, but a national audience not read up on all of it might not. So we heard about the phony witch hunt, in his words. We heard about they spied on his campaign erroneously. There are facts that should not go uncorrected, even at this initial point. President Obama did not tell Donald Trump we were going to war with North Korea. Donald Trump's tax returns were not poured over by the Mueller investigation, as we thought and were led to believe at the time contemporaneously. Biden at one point felt the need to remind the incumbent that he was running against him, Joe Biden. And the president's words, and I'll be curious to hear other analysts, seem to harken back to the era of the escalator in many ways, when he ranked himself with Lincoln for what he's done for people of color in this country. Joe Biden later pounced on that. And so ends the final debate. A dozen days out, Trump against Biden, more Hunter Biden than Joe at times, but a Biden nonetheless. And as I toss to my colleagues, to Rachel, Nicole, and Joy, I would only add a personal note. Somebody owes our colleague, Kristen Welker, an apology. Take it away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's owed an apology by the president, who attacked her over and over and over again, heading into this event tonight, trying to work the refs, trying to intimidate her. Clearly, Kristen Welker was not intimidated. She is owed an apology. You're right, Brian, from the president on that. But I think she's owed congratulations by the country. I think if there was a clear winner from this debate tonight, I don't know who would argue with the fact that it was, in fact, Kristen Welker who did an incredibly professional, cogent, coherent job. I mean, I realize this is a little like our bar is low. This is like, going to go see a concert and you're like, wow, somebody hit the snare drum once and it made a sound. I mean, we're so excited that it was actually a debate between two people where they talked about policy and had arguments and you could understand every word of what they were saying and there was very little talking over each other. I mean, it was a functional debate and one that involved Donald Trump, which means Kristen Welker just broke the space-time continuum. And I think, maybe that's going to be the biggest takeaway tonight. I want to hear from you guys desperately in terms of what you thought about how this went overall. I will say that I think the format of the debate and the moderation was a very good success. But before we get too much distance between us and what we just heard, in addition to the lies that Brian just singled out there, and kudos to him for doing so quickly, I do think there were a number of lies that are potentially dangerous to leave hanging out there for the American people, specifically about COVID. And I just want to highlight a couple of those. The president did say tonight, again, that there is a cure for coronavirus. There is not a cure for coronavirus. And every time the president says that, he is misleading the American people in a way that is potentially very dangerous. If people are calibrating the riskiness of their behavior based on how serious it will be if they get infected, the president telling you it's a cure is something that could kill you, because there is no cure. And he says it over and over again, and it is not true. He said U.S. excess mortality rate is lower than almost any other country. That's not true. We have one of the worst excess mortality rates in the entire country. The president said he's been congratulated by many countries on what we've been able to do. We have the worst COVID outbreak on earth and the most of our citizens dead. Anybody who's congratulating him on that doesn't mean it in a good way. The president also said, as Brian noted, that we are rounding the corner. It's going away. We are rounding the bend, rounding the turn. These spikes and surges will all soon be gone. There's no sign of that whatsoever. In fact, it looks like our country is heading into a third peak that looks like it will be higher than any other peak that we have had thus far. That means more people sick, more people infected, more people spreading it, more people in the hospital, and ultimately more of us dead. The president tells a lot of lies about COVID, and we don't have to fact check everything that he said right now, but there's no reason to believe that military families gave it to him. I don't know why he keeps saying that. I don't know why he says that young people are of no concern if they get infected. The president's saying tonight that the transmittal rate to the teachers is very small. In Florida alone, in September alone, 189 teachers were infected between September 6th and September 26th. Writing off the teachers and saying, don't worry, the kids won't give it to you. The president is just flat out making that up, and it's potentially dangerous. The president also trying to give the impression tonight that it's only states where there are Democratic governors that have trouble with coronavirus right now, completely ignoring the fact that the state with the highest coronavirus rate of increase in the country right now, the worst COVID outbreak, in fact, on earth right now, is in the state of North Dakota, which is not run by a Democrat. Neither is Tony Fauci a Democrat. And I know there's a lot that the president said that was wrong tonight. There's a lot of fact checks, but I feel like the COVID ones are just dangerous. And so we have to get to them right away.
So that was epic fact checking by Rachel Maddow, and it's still under 7 minutes after the debate when MSNBC gets to their supposed Republican, I guess never Trumper, Nicole Wallace, but she did work for the Bush administration, so she counts as a Republican response. And then I've also included Joy Reid because they're talking about the clip that I think, from my point of view, is the issue that is up there near the top of disqualifying issues regarding Trump as a president, like one of his epic, monstrous failures, family separation. If you want to know more about that, there's Jacob Soboroff's book over here, Separated, but Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid talk about that in the second MSNBC clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Right away. Nicole.
Well, listen, I think that for 4.5 years now, Trump has benefited by the fact that expectations for him tonight were that he could finish his sentence and not leave. So let me just grade this debate by the old-fashioned standards. Joe Biden won this debate running away. Not only did Donald Trump lie, and all the lies you just singled out were in the first 15 minutes of an hour-and-a-half long debate. In the old days, one lie meant you lost. One lie meant you'd spend the next week you'd start in the spin room where all the staffers would walk in under signs with their names on it, defending the one lie and say, oh, we didn't really mean to do that. They never cried. He lied. I mean, Daniel Dale, who's been tracking Trump's lies, wrote this. An avalanche of lying, even by Donald Trump standards. But let me tell you, on planet Earth, the big, I think, gut punch from Donald Trump is I don't know a person who doesn't find the child separation policy searing. And I remember where I was when you started to cry on television, Rachel Maddow. It still makes me cry.
Don't make me do it again.
And I remember where I was when I first heard the ProPublica tape of children wailing at a detention center. And I happen to know multiple Trump officials who are today, right now, in a desperate attempt to repair their reputations because of any association with this policy. That's what's happening on planet Earth. On the planet that guy lives on, Donald Trump, this was the answer. The coyotes did it. The coyotes didn't do it. The child separation policy had, in the letter of the law, the physical separation. And we learned in an IG report, which leaked a couple weeks ago from DOJ IG Mr. Horowitz, that children who are breastfeeding were physically separated from their parents. That's the horror of the Trump administration. That's the horror of what Donald Trump stood on a stage and couldn't even engage in a conversation about.
When he said they were all very well taken care of. It was the only one. We all listened, actually. We were good this time. We didn't kibitz through this whole thing. We listened. All three of us gasped when he said they were very well taken care of.
Can I just say, I went to Tornillo, which is one of the places that they held children. These were children who had come unaccompanied, and they were basically in a prison camp. It looked like a literal prison camp. And I had nightmares myself of having looked into the eyes of these little kids who didn't know who we were. They didn't know if we were there to steal them, to help them, to save them. They had no idea who we were. We weren't allowed to talk to them other than being able to say, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? That's it. You couldn't ask them any questions. You'd get thrown out. But the fear and the terror and the drawings that were in the place where they slept, which were bunks that looked like military barrack bunks. And there was one little child who had drawn a picture that essentially looked like the crucifixion. These were little kids. And the idea that they're well taken care of, the people who ran that place actually opposed the policy. They weren't even into the policy, didn't even approve of the policy. There were only 10 medical beds there. So if COVID broke out there's going to be a lot of kids that got sick. They even said that it was an abomination to have it. And they, at the time, told us, and Jacob Soboroff was there as well, we specifically, and I specifically asked, one of my questions was, how are you going to reunite those kids with their parents? And they said, well, we have an A number. There's an A number on the child, and there's an A number on the kid, and on the parent. That was a lie. That was a lie. We now know from Jacob's reporting, from lots of other reporting, from KQED, which is there were two Latino reporters from KQED, which is a PBS outlet They lied. They never had a plan to give these kids back. They took breastfeeding kids from their parents and never had a plan to give them back.
And Joy Reid there gave some credit to KQED, this PBS station in Northern California, and Jacob Soboroff, the author of Separated here, but also the ACLU. The ACLU has been one of the major nonprofit organizations fighting the Trump administration, trying to reunite the families. That was great criticism of the Trump administration. Rachel Maddow crying apparently when she heard about the family separation. It is awful, but I want to move on to the CNN clips. CNN, Jake Tapper, you saw a brief, I used the political comedy clip, starts with Wolf Blitzer, Jake Tapper. This is the journalist before they get to the panel. This is all the way until Jake Tapper hands it over to Anderson Cooper in the panel. About 6 minutes, CNN's initial response to the final Biden-Trump presidential debate over here.
So there you have it, a much more coherent debate compared to that first matchup a few weeks ago. The President of the United States obviously listened to his key advisors here. There was very little interrupting. They mostly followed the rules, but still focusing in on some of the major differences that they have. The American public clearly has a better appreciation of where these two men stand on some of the most important policy issues of the day. Their family members are coming up on the stage right now. We're going to watch a little bit of this before they both disappear. But, Jake, this was clearly a much different debate than the first one.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. It was definitely a more normal debate. President Trump behaved more like a regular person might, theoretically. I think it's fair to say that Trump supporters and Republican office holders can relax for the night. They can exhale. He didn't set himself on fire tonight like he did at the first debate. He did lie like Pinocchio, and I'm sure Daniel Dale will get to that in the fact-checking section. But beyond that, it's fair to say I think President Trump got in a couple clean hits when it came to Vice President Biden, when it came to the 1994 crime bill, when it came to Joe Biden being in politics for so long. He even probably fed some raw meat to his base successfully using Breitbart, Fox lingo that most voters have no idea what he's talking about. But he got those shots in there, however, based in reality, they are. The problem for the president, as I see it, is twofold. One, Joe Biden did fine. He had a fine performance. He definitely reached the threshold. And given that so much of this election is a referendum on Donald Trump, and he is the underdog, according to polls, Joe Biden is ahead, Joe Biden did nothing to disqualify himself. It was a fine performance. And the second problem is that Joe Biden scored points. He got his licks in on issues that I think might affect voters more when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic, when it comes to health care and the fact that the Trump administration has not offered any sort of viable alternative to Obamacare. And then there was that rough moment that had to do with the fact that of the child family separation policy, there are still more than 500 kids that the Trump administration has not been able to place back with the parents whose arms they snatched them from. So I think at the end of the day, Dana, the race has been fairly stable. Mm-hmm. I think, there might be some movement when it comes to soft Trump supporters who are unsure, feeling like, well, that's a more normal person than the last debate. And maybe even some points scored in terms of getting black men who really hate that 1994 crime bill and their families on board, perhaps. But I don't see anything that will change the trajectory of the race in a significant way. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. Look, we all described in colorful terms what we thought of the first presidential debate, and this was a debate. It's what Americans should expect when they are watching two people who want to be the leader of their country, the leader of their free world, to try to figure out where they stand on policy issues and where they are when it comes to their character. As you said, there were a lot of things that Daniel will get to that were just flat out lies, and they got off course talking about things that probably most people don't care about, especially in where we are in a pandemic and in very, very tough times. But Donald Trump listened to his advisors this time. I talked to a lot of them going into the debate. They told me exactly what they were trying to get him to do, which is much like they did the last time. He didn't listen last time. He did this time for the most part. But you know what? So did Joe Biden. He did what he practiced to do.
Yeah, and honestly, this debate was just the same content from the first debate, except that now you could understand what people are saying. And so in that respect, it was better because people could, really evaluate the differences between what was being said. But in terms of the substance of what was being said, the president fell into some of the same patterns, continued to downplay the virus and the effect of this upswing that the country is currently in right now, heading into the holiday season. He kept doing something that I think Joe Biden actually tried to exploit, which is dividing the country into red states and blue states, repeatedly talking about the red states or the blue states are doing this and the blue states
your
want
Democrats,
this, and
your Democrat governors
want that. And if you watch the ads that are on television for the Biden campaign right now, the message right now is not about, coronavirus. It's not about fracking. It's not about any of those things. It's about unity. It's about bringing the country together. And you saw Joe Biden repeatedly saying, I'm not going to do that. I think the president really walked back into that trap because if you listen to him day to day, like we all do, you hear the same content that he gives off in all of his interviews, in his media gaggles. It happened on the debate stage in a calmer tone, but it still isn't bridging the gap with the voters in the middle.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that the president has been lying about the coronavirus pandemic since February. I mean, just straight up lying about it. It's going to be over by Easter. I could go through them, but you get the point. And we cover this every day. The three of us and all of the journalists at CNN cover this. And the truth of the matter is the president did it again tonight. He said, we're turning the curve. We're not going into a dark winter. The vaccine's going to be here in weeks. None of this is true. Right. Every health expert, including
Continue to criticize Fauci.
Yeah, that was a great fact check briefly by Jake Tapper there. And then he transitions to the panel with Anderson Cooper. And here you'll see the bipartisan analysis from David Axelrod, who used to work for Obama, and then Rick Santorum, who used to be a right-wing Republican senator. In the second CNN clip, I will talk about with you a little more after we watch together over here.
Every health expert, including those in his administration, Anderson, every single one says what Joe Biden said tonight, and they all say that what President Trump said tonight to the American people is not true. And this is the fundamental problem with the president's pitch, is that the country can see that he's lying about the pandemic.
Yeah, and so many people in this country have already voted and will vote by Election Day. Well, let's go to our team standing by. David Axelrod, just for everybody's quick take, what did you think?
Look, fundamentally, if you're ahead and you get a draw, you win. And both of them were better than they were last time. But I thought that Joe Biden held his own, and that's all he had to do. The trajectory of this race did not change, and as Abby pointed out, he did some big business in terms of speaking as an American president, and swiping at Trump for being so partisan and talking about red and blue states and so on. I thought those were powerful points, and it's one of the reasons why he is in the position he's in.
I think that I agree with David. I think that Biden was sharper tonight than he was at the last debate. Maybe that was because he wasn't given much of a chance. But I do think he scored some points really against against Trump, particularly on immigration. When they were talking about the children in cages, struck me was when Trump said, they are so well taken care of.
Yeah,
total lie.
It was just, A, it's a lie, and B, the statement itself is just so stunning to me that I almost couldn't believe that someone would really say that. And then, I'm just looking over the whole debate. Overall, what the president was trying to do is present himself as the outsider, talking about you politicians, when in fact, he's been running the country for the last 4 years. And I thought that was pretty striking also, because it also isn't true.
Senator Santorum, he did a lot of what you said he was going to do.
Yeah, he sure did. He delivered. You guys watched a different debate than I did, and certainly from everything I'm hearing from my folks, I mean, you guys watched a very different debate. I think Donald Trump was right on his game. I actually think that he completely skewered Joe Biden. You mentioned the point where he called Biden a politician looking in the camera. I think every time after that, everyone thought about that line, that here he is just looking in the camera, being a typical politician. The other thing, and I'll be curious to see how many people pick up on this. Joe Biden, at the end of the thing, looking at his watch. If you recall, the campaign with George H.W. Bush looked at his watch because he was sweating it out. And I think that's what a lot of people were saying, that Joe Biden was bobbly, a little shaky at the end, and looking at his watch to see when this thing would be over. I think that's going to be a meme out of this debate.
So there you see Rick Santorum giving the Republican side almost 9 minutes into the CNN, or 7 or 8 minutes into the CNN analysis. Now I'm going to get to the Fox News analysis after the debate. Took longest to get to bipartisan analysis. I'm going to give it to you in 2 parts. The first is like over almost 6.5 minutes of Republican Fox News analysis. Even they couldn't say that Trump really won the debate, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
The final debate of 2020, spirited at times, a different tone and tenor than the first debate, as you see the First Lady making her way up to the stage, as well as Dr. Joe Biden with a mask there. It was a debate of substance for all of the back and forth about the mute and how that was going to factor in. It actually factored in well. Both candidates got a lot more to say than obviously that first debate. President Trump had a recurring theme about being an outsider, about being an anti-politician, attacking Joe Biden for being in Washington for 47 years, and what did you get done in the 8 years that you were vice president? Vice President Biden saying numerous times into the camera about character, about bringing the country together, having some of his strongest moments in that framework. Pretty spirited, but got a lot of substance in.
Yeah, it was very constructive evening. I think that Americans saw 96 minutes, I think it was in the end, of a very spirited debate. The 2-minute introductory, the 2-minute response seemed to work well. I think that President Trump is probably going to feel like he hit his mark a lot better this time than he did last time. We saw clearly Donald Trump, the businessman, looking at the economy through the lens of creating jobs. He was very pointed in his attacks on Joe Biden in terms of the 47 years that he spent in Washington. They had some very interesting back and forth on energy towards the end there about the oil industry. Joe Biden saying that he would like to phase it out, transition it out, I believe was the word that he used, over time. There were interruptions. The moderator did jump in. We're doing an official count, but it looks like she jumped in and cut off President Trump many more times than she did with Joe Biden. And we'll have to see how the timing worked out and, whether or not he was over his time when that happened. But it did feel as if there was a little bit more of that on the Trump side. 24-2 is the unofficial count, but we're working on exactly how many times that happened and why.
One of the challenges is that moving on to the next topic seemed to happen just as some of that debate was going back and forth between the two men. Our panel is standing by with analysis. Chris Wallace, Britt Hume, Dana Perino, Juan Williams, Katie Pavlich, Donna Brazil, and Karl Rove. Chris Wallace, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm jealous. I would have liked to have been able to moderate that debate and to get a real exchange of views instead of hundreds of interruptions. I thought it was a good debate, a good substantive debate, 2 very competing visions for the country. I thought that Biden had many more specific plans, whether it came to how to handle the COVID, whether it came to how to handle climate change, whether it came to how to handle health care. I thought the president's presentation, he was more fluid. There were clearly times when Joe Biden seemed to falter a little bit in making his point or finishing his sentence. I thought, honestly, and this may speak a little bit to Martha, that the topics and the questions played more to Biden's advantage than they did to the president's. That may be a matter of opinion, but it just seemed to me that they were questions in which Biden could play offense and the president was forced onto defense. I was really struck by the emails because the president obviously was going to bring it up. He did bring it up. I thought Biden was very successful in kind of countering it by immediately throwing the president on defense about his China bank account, and then especially on his failure to turn over his tax returns during his 4 years. And the president got quite defensive about that. In terms of sort of the key clips, moments, I thought that you're exactly right. The president talked a lot about, you've had all these years in Washington, why haven't you done it? You're a typical politician, all talk, no action. For Joe Biden, I thought that his best exchange was when the president said, I'm the least racist person in this room. And Joe Biden said, Abraham Lincoln over here is the most racist president we've ever had. And he's got a dog whistle as big as a foghorn. But as I say, I think a good substantive debate, and both sides will find plenty to use from this debate and build on.
Yeah, several interesting moments. I want to bring Britt into the conversation here. One that I thought...
Okay, I can't even show you all that. I don't even want to show you Britt Hume, who's like over and over said that he thinks Biden is senile with no evidence, and I'm going to cut out a couple minutes there just so I can get to the final part where they have and to give them credit, the Republican pundits there did in fact give some negative reaction to Trump's performance and a positive reaction to Biden's. At least even Britt Hume is going to say that this debate performance didn't really change the dynamics of the race, which Biden is winning. But anyway, here is the final part of that Fox News analysis, including Juan Williams pointing out things that no one else in all those pundits you saw would ever point out over here.
The final debate of 2020. Yeah, Dana, that's, I guess, the real big question this close to the election is how much does it fundamentally change the electorate, especially in these key battleground states?
I was just noting that at 11:30 this morning, I was on with Sandra Smith, and I mentioned that 42 million people had voted. By the time we got on air tonight, it was nearly 50 million people had already voted. So this thing is moving very quickly. It's already underway. Whereas the first debate was sort of like whitewater rafting blindfolded, this one was more like being on the lazy river and not even spilling my drink. I thought that it was good for both candidates, that they were... they benefited from the 2-minute rule, being able to make their points. And I also think that, whereas in the first debate, Joe Biden cleared the very low bar that had been set for him. The bar for President Trump in this debate was set very high. And I also think he cleared it as well. I think that he acquitted himself very well in this in terms of allowing Vice President Biden to run out of steam in his answers, not interrupt him. I don't think that a lot of the policy details were there for the Biden team, and that's been a frustration for the Trump campaign because they feel like they just can't ever find a way to nail him down on a couple of specifics. But I think that the ultimate winner tonight is the viewer, the American people who tuned in, because you really were able to get a measure of both people. There's very different visions for the country coming from these two candidates.
Juan Williams, your thoughts? There were a lot of culture questions. Kristen Welker asked about the talk that families of color give to their children about being pulled over. A lot of discussion along those lines. What did you think tonight as we watch the Trump family exiting the building now?
Well, on that point, I mean, I thought it was telling when Mrs. Trump came on the stage tonight, she clearly had a mask on. And I think that said something about not only the enforcement of rules around here, but apparently a little change in attitude about what the Trump team thinks the American people want to see at this point. But to your question, Martha, we had in this debate mentions of Adolf Hitler and Abraham Lincoln. And clearly what you saw from Vice President Biden was the suggestion that Donald Trump is not the least racist man in the history, least racist president in the history of the United States, but a man who has called the Black Lives Matter movement terrorist and gone on about NFL players protesting as deserving to be fired. And I didn't think when President Trump responded in terms of saying, well, I lowered this unemployment rate, I did this and that, and you put more people in jail I thought Vice President Biden stepped up to the plate by saying he had made a mistake. And then the counter from President Trump was to say, well, you've been in office. This is what Brett Baer was picking up. You've been in office. You've been around. You had your chance. And there came Vice President Biden again, coming back, I thought, pretty strongly to say, we did make improvements. We got 37,000 people out of jail. We granted clemency to 1,000 people. We looked for pattern.
And Juan Williams there said the 37,000 people out of jail, which actually turns out not to be true. It's more like 19,000. But he did do, finally, on Fox News, gave some truth about Biden's performance. So I appreciate that. That's the last clip I want to show you. I want to thank all of you who showed up for the live show. I do have a brief Dash and Sandy clip, or dandy clip for the Dash and Sandy fans out there. This is Sandy and then Dash exiting the door to the outside that I briefly captured for you before the show this afternoon over here. Sorry, I'm so rushed. Sorry, that's the best Dash and Sandy clip I could get for you, but I got to finish up the show and move on to some other things. So thanks for joining me. I will be back on Sunday and every Sunday for, well, at least till January 20th, 2021. Thanks for my those of you who joined the live stream. I appreciate the recorded show viewers who comment after the show. Until Sunday, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.